All right, get ready to dive deep into the world of Primitivo.
Sounds delicious.
We've got some fascinating source material to unpack. Excerpts from a book, all in Portuguese, titled Primitivo.
Perfect for a deep dive.
Our mission is to uncover what makes this Italian wine, specifically from the Puglia region, so captivating.
Well, one thing that's always intrigued me about Primitivo is its connection to Zinfandel.
Oh, you mean like how similar they taste?
It's more than just a similarity in taste. For years, people thought they were distinct varietals.
Right.
And then DNA testing revealed they're actually the same grape.
Whoa, really?
It kind of shook up the wine world.
Okay, I'm hooked already. But how can one grape make wines that are so different?
That's where the story gets even more interesting. This grape has traveled the globe.
Oh?
We know it as Zinfandel here, but it actually originated in Croatia, where it's called Tribodrag.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
And then, sometime in the 18th century, Benedictine monks brought it over to Puglia, Italy. That's where it really took root and developed its own unique character.
So we've got this globe-trotting grape landing in Puglia. What is it about that region that makes Primitivo so special?
It all comes down to what we call terroir, that magical mix of climate, soil, and even human touch that shapes a wine's personality.
I see.
And Puglia, let me tell you, has got it all. Hot, sunny days, those calcareous soils we often hear about with Primitivo, and the influence of the Adriatic Sea.
So it's like the perfect recipe for growing grapes.
It really is. But even within Puglia, there are certain areas that stand out when it comes to Primitivo.
Like what?
Two key regions come to mind, Manduria and Gioia del Colle.
I've heard of Manduria.
Each one boasts a unique microclimate and soil composition, so you end up with some really distinct Primitivo expressions.
Okay, so let's break down those regional differences. What's special about Manduria?
Manduria is kind of like the powerhouse of Primitivo.
Uh-huh.
Picture this. Vineyards just soaking up the sun right on the heel of Italy's boot, with the Adriatic Sea practically at their doorstep.
Sounds idyllic.
This is where you'll find the Primitivo di Manduria DOC, a designation that signifies quality and region-specific character.
So these are like the top-tier Primitivos.
You could say that. They're known for their intensity, structure, and incredible aging potential.
You keep mentioning intensity. What contributes to that?
Well, Manduria's summers are long and hot, which allows those Primitivo grapes to ripen fully and develop a real concentration of sugars and flavors.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the soil.
Right.
It's primarily clay and limestone.
Ah, so that's where that minerality comes from that people talk about.
Exactly. That soil composition forces the vines to dig deep for nutrients. It's like a survival tactic for the vines that ends up giving the grapes a unique complexity and structure.
So it's safe to say Manduria is for those who like a wine with some oomph, right?
Exactly. You want a wine that can stand the test of time. This is it. They age gracefully and just get more complex and nuanced over time.
I like a wine with a story.
You'll get bold fruit, spices, even earthy notes in a Manduria Primitivo.
I bet. And Gioia del Colle.
Gioia del Colle. A very different take on Primitivo.
You mentioned it was more elegant. What sets it apart?
Well, it's a bit cooler there, being further inland and at a higher altitude.
Oh.
Plus, there's a greater difference between the daytime and nighttime temperatures, which is important for grape development.
I've heard about that. Diurnal shift, right?
Exactly. And the result, Primitivos that are a bit more restrained, but no less flavorful.
More finesse than brute force.
I like that. You'll find bright red fruits, floral hints, and a more subtle oak influence.
Sounds delightful.
It's all about balance and showcasing the unique characteristics of the terroir.
It's fascinating how the same grape can produce such contrasting styles.
Isn't it?
But it's not just about where the grape is grown.
Right.
The winemaker plays a role, too.
Absolutely. The choices a winemaker makes in the cellar can drastically change the final product. Take maceration, for example. That's the time the grape skins and juice hang out together. A shorter maceration, maybe 5 to 7 days, will give you those vibrant, fruit-forward Primitivos bursting with fresh berry aromas.
And what if they want to create a Primitivo that's more complex, something that can age?
Then they might extend the maceration, sometimes up to 15 days or even longer.
Wow.
And they might choose to ferment or age the wine in oak barrels.
I've heard that oak can add a lot of complexity.
It does. You get layers of spice, vanilla, toast, sometimes even chocolate notes. It really depends on the winemaker's vision and the style they're aiming for.
So many options. And what about rosé? I love rosé.
Ah, yes. Primitivo Rosé is a real treat.
Tell me more.
For rosé, they use a very short maceration period,
Okay.
just a few hours. That's how you get that delicate pink color and those super refreshing fruit characteristics.
It sounds perfect for a summer day.
Absolutely.
So we've covered the origin story, the magic of terroir, and the winemaker's influence. But let's get to the good stuff. What should we expect when we actually pour a glass of Primitivo?
Get ready for a sensory adventure. Even just the aromas are captivating. You'll get those ripe red and black fruits like cherry, blackberry, plum, maybe even a hint of fig. And often you'll find these wonderful sweet spices, things like cinnamon and clove.
That sounds amazing.
Sometimes you'll even get these deeper notes of chocolate, coffee, or tobacco, especially in those aged Primitivos.
Really?
Absolutely.
And for those oak-aged Primitivos, there's even more complexity.
Oh, yeah. You've got to watch out for those toasty, vanilla, and caramel notes that the oak barrels impart. It adds a whole other dimension.
You're making my mouth water.
But remember, smelling is just the beginning. When you take a sip, let those flavors really wash over your palate. It's all about balance.
What do you mean by balance?
Well, Primitivo can have this initial sweetness, but it's always tempered by its natural acidity and tannins.
Okay.
So you get this harmonious interplay between the fruit, the acidity, and those tannins.
Like a perfectly choreographed dance.
Exactly. And it creates a really smooth, satisfying experience.
I'm definitely ready for a glass now. But with all these different styles, are there any general guidelines for pairing Primitivo with food?
Well, Primitivo is a very food-friendly wine. I always say you can't go wrong with those classic Italian pairings.
Like what?
Pasta with tomato-based sauces, pizzas with simple toppings, grilled sausages, anything where the wine's vibrant fruitiness can complement the flavors of the dish.
It makes sense.
You've got the acidity of the tomato sauce, the sweetness of the Primitivo, maybe some herbs and spices that echo the wine's subtle spice notes.
Delicious.
And if you're having a more robust Primitivo, like one from Manduria, think about richer dishes, more intense flavors.
Oh, like what?
Grilled red meats, lamb chops, those hearty stews.
That's perfect for a cold night.
It is. Those are all fantastic pairings.
The wine structure can hold up to those bolder flavors, right?
Exactly. And don't be afraid to try it with some aged cheeses, too. The combination can be fantastic.
I'll have to experiment with that. And what about the elegant Primitivos from Giù del Colle? Anything specific for those?
Ah, yes. Remember, these wines are all about balance and finesse, so they pair beautifully with lighter dishes.
Okay.
Think roasted poultry, pork tenderloin with a nice fruit sauce, or even a mushroom-based pasta dish.
So there's a Primitivo out there for every occasion and palate. I'm already feeling inspired to explore further.
So that's the spirit. We've only just begun to uncover the intricacies of Primitivo. Join us next time as we delve deeper into those fascinating regional differences and what makes each style so unique.
Welcome back to our Primitivo adventure. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much to discover.
I'm ready to dive deeper into those regional distinctions, Manduria and Gioia del Colle.
Great.
What makes them so unique, and how do those differences actually show up in the wine itself?
Let's transport ourselves to Manduria first.
Okay.
Right on the heel of Italy's boot. Imagine sun-drenched vineyards, ancient olive groves dotting the landscape,
Lovely.
and the Adriatic sea breeze just constantly sweeping in.
You're really painting a picture.
And it is. It's a truly magical place. And this is where you find that Primitivo di Manduria DOC we talked about.
Right.
Those wines known for their intensity and structure.
And that aging potential you mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
So what is it about Manduria?
What gives it that intensity?
Yeah, is it just the hot summers?
Well, the soil plays a huge GE role,
Oh, of course.
mainly clay and limestone.
Uh-huh.
It drains well, but also forces the vines to dig deep for nutrients.
So they have to work harder.
It's like a survival tactic,
Yeah.
right? And that translates into those concentrated flavors
I see.
and that distinctive minerality.
I can taste it already.
Manduria Primitivos have this brooding quality.
Oh,
Ripe, dark fruit,
okay.
spice, and sometimes even a little leather or earthiness.
Wow.
They also tend to have a higher alcohol content.
Makes sense with all that sunshine.
Exactly. So it adds to that richness and intensity.
If I were to try a Manduria Primitivo right now, what should I be looking for?
Well, first, swirl it and take a deep breath. You might get ripe black cherry,
Okay.
plum, fig, maybe a touch of dried fruit like dates or raisins.
Ooh.
Then you might get some spice.
Like what? Cinnamon?
Absolutely. Clove, even a hint of licorice. And underneath it all, that subtle minerality we talked about.
A reminder of the unique soil.
Exactly.
Sounds like a whole symphony of flavors going on.
It is.
But you mentioned earlier that Gioia del Colle offers a very different style.
It does.
Tell me about that.
It's further inland,
Mm.
higher altitude,
Right.
more rolling hills, a little cooler. And what's really interesting is the more pronounced temperature variation between day and night.
Oh, the diurnal shift.
Exactly. And that plays a huge role in the style of the wines.
How so?
It allows the grapes to retain more acidity. So the wines have a brighter, more refreshing character.
Makes sense.
Still full of flavor, but it's more delicate, more red berries, floral notes.
So instead of that powerful, brooding character we talked about, this is more about finesse, elegance,
Precisely.
lighter in body.
Often lower alcohol content.
Interesting.
They might still see a little oak aging, but it's very subtle.
Oh, really?
Meant to just complement the fruit, not dominate it.
Okay, so what should I be looking for in a Gioia del Colle Primitivo?
Well, think fresh red cherries,
Okay.
raspberries, maybe a touch of strawberry.
Ooh, nice.
And you might pick up some delicate floral aromas.
Violets, roses.
Exactly. And on the palate, that lovely, refreshing acidity, silky texture,
Oh.
lingering finish. It's all about elegance, not power.
Wow, it's amazing how two regions, so close together, can produce such contrasting wines from the same grape.
That's the power of terroir, right? Even the slightest variations can make a huge difference.
And for us wine lovers, it means more options to explore.
Exactly. More delicious discoveries to be made.
Do we want something bold and powerful?
Or elegant and refined.
That's part of the fun.
Yeah.
Figuring out what you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no matter the style, one question always pops up.
What's that?
Food pairing.
Oh, of course. What are we going to eat with this delicious Primitivo?
Exactly. What are your recommendations?
Primitivo is a dream when it comes to food pairings.
That's good to hear.
For those younger, fruit-forward Primitivos, stick with those classic Italian comfort food pairings.
I love that.
Pasta with a simple tomato sauce, pizza with fresh toppings, maybe some grilled sausages.
Perfect.
The wine's bright fruitiness complements those flavors so well.
Yeah.
You've got the acidity from the tomato sauce, the sweetness of the Primitivo, and maybe some herbs and spices in the dish that echo those subtle spice notes in the wine.
It's all about creating that harmony.
Right, exactly.
What about a richer Primitivo, like one from Manduria?
Ah, in that case, bring on those bolder, more intense dishes.
Ooh, like what?
Grilled red meats,
Okay.
lamb chops with some rosemary, hearty stews with root vegetables. Those are all fantastic pairings. The wine structure and those tannins can handle those bolder flavors.
That makes sense.
If you're feeling adventurous, try it with some aged cheese.
Ooh, yeah.
It's a truly delicious combination.
And the elegant Primitivos from Gioia del Colle. What do we pair those with?
For those wines, since they're all about balance and finesse, choose dishes that have that same elegance.
Got it.
Roasted poultry,
Okay.
pork tenderloin with a nice fruit sauce.
Yeah.
Or a mushroom-based pasta dish, something a little lighter.
It sounds like there's a Primitivo out there for every culinary whim.
There really is, but it's not just about the food and wine pairing itself. There are other things to consider.
Oh, what?
Serving temperature.
Of course.
You might chill a light red a bit, but a Primitivo, especially one that's full-bodied, you want it a little cooler than room temperature.
Okay, so not straight from the fridge.
Exactly. Think about 60, 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Let those aromas and flavors really open up.
Makes sense.
And don't underestimate glassware.
I know. The right glass makes a difference.
A large, bold glass gives the wine some room to breathe.
To aerate.
Exactly. You can swirl it gently.
Like those aromas come up.
And then take a sip.
There's almost like a ritual to it.
It is. It's all about really appreciating the wine. But remember, there's no right or wrong way to enjoy Primitivo. It's all about what you like. Just savor the experience.
This has been so insightful. I'm really starting to understand what makes Primitivo so special.
It's more than just a bold, fruity red, isn't it?
Exactly.
There's so much depth to discover.
And it seems like a great variety worth exploring.
Definitely.
Welcome back to our Primitivo Deep Dive. We've traveled from Croatia to Italy, explored sun-drenched vineyards, and even uncorked the secrets behind those bold and elegant expressions.
But, like any agricultural product, Primitivo production faces its share of challenges.
Right, like climate change.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about it these days.
It's a big deal.
So how's it impacting the world of Primitivo?
Well, Puglia, like a lot of wine regions, is dealing with the realities of a changing climate. Rising temperatures, less predictable rainfall, and more extreme weather events.
Wow, so how are Primitivo producers dealing with all that? Are they adapting?
They are.
That's good to hear.
They're incredibly resilient and pretty ingenious.
What are they doing?
Water management is a major focus.
Makes sense.
A lot of producers are using new irrigation techniques like drip irrigation.
I've heard of that.
It delivers water directly to the vine's roots, so there's less waste.
That's smart.
And they're looking at ways to improve soil health and water retention.
No, the soil can hold on to more water.
Exactly. Some are even planting cover crops between the vine rows.
Cover crops.
It's a mix of grasses or legumes.
What do those do?
They help prevent erosion, enrich the soil, and reduce evaporation.
It's like giving the vineyard its own little ecosystem.
That's a great way to think about it. It's a very holistic approach, and it's super important with all the changes happening. But they're not just adapting, they're also doing a lot of research and development to create new Primitivo clones.
Clones? I don't think I understand.
Think of it as selective breeding.
Okay.
They're looking for vines that are naturally resistant to drought and heat.
Oh?
And then they use those to create new clones that can handle a changing climate better.
So they're like future-proofing Primitivo.
Exactly. It shows a real commitment to the grape's success. But beyond just climate change, there's the global wine market to think about.
Oh, right. What's happening there?
Well, there's a lot of competition.
Consumers have a lot of choices.
That's right. So Primitivo producers are really focusing on what makes their wines special.
More than just a bold red wine.
They're crafting wines that really capture the spirit of Puglia.
I love that. How are they doing that?
Well, the Primitivo di Manduria DOC has been huge in building a reputation for quality. But it goes beyond regulations. They're using more natural, artisanal winemaking methods.
Like what?
Indigenous yeasts, less intervention in the cellar, letting the terroir really express itself.
So it's about authenticity.
Exactly. Letting the grape, the soil, the climate all tell their story. And there's a growing movement towards sustainable and organic practices, too.
I noticed that.
People care about where their food and drink come from and how it's made.
Definitely.
And a lot of Primitivo producers are leading the way. They're reducing their use of chemicals, focusing on biodiversity in the vineyards, and adopting practices that are good for the environment.
It's great to see that commitment to sustainability. It benefits everyone.
Absolutely. So there are definitely challenges, but the future of Primitivo is looking pretty bright.
I agree.
They're adaptable, they're innovative.
They respect the land.
You got it. That's a solid foundation for success.
Wow, you've really given me a whole new appreciation for Primitivo.
Good.
It's more than just a bold, fruity red.
It is. There's so much depth and complexity to discover.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure.
I've learned so much.
I encourage all of you listening to try a bottle of Primitivo and experience it for yourselves.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
And thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Primitivo. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.